Hey, welcome to How About We Do This Together, a podcast ministry of the Northwest Christian Network. I'm Troy Dean, and my co-host is Matt Holmes, oftentimes Daniel Malaputi, and with many other speakers. It's a podcast where we ask a question and answer it at the same time. How about we do this together?
Everybody, welcome to another episode of How About We Do This Together, a podcast of the Northwest Christian Network. We are here continuing our conversation at the end of day 3, which is our focus on global missions. And it's been a great day. We've had great conversations, and we're just excited to dig into our keynote speaker, Kip Lines' message that he brought. Man, I mean, anytime somebody comes in and talks about unity, I'll volunteer to turn the pages, but you had a laptop, so I couldn't. Oh, man. But anyway, my name's Matt. I'm from Turner Christian Church, Matt Holmes, and with me in the room are...
I'm Kip Lines, Executive Director of CMF.
Joe Hoover, member of Monmouth Christian Church.
Troy Dean, and campus pastor at Bushnell University in Eugene, Oregon.
And so your presentation actually ended up being a little different than your original plan, because it ended up being a history of the giving us the context of your ministry and what you guys do and how you came about.
That's true.
Then, which was great, and then a killer message at the end, for the second half, which we're not going to retell, but you can watch it on our website, www.mynwcc.com/endure, which will be in the show notes as well.
The evening sessions.
Yeah, in the evening session section. That's what we're talking about today. So go check that out. But yeah, it was 2 in 1.
It really was.
Which was well transitioned. It didn't feel jarring. It wasn't like it didn't feel long. And it also didn't feel like a stop, restart.
Right.
Like we do with the podcasts, because the last episode we just finished talking about. It was seamless. But yeah, it was really interesting.
I could give you a little context for that. It was earlier today, just having discussion with folks after lunch. And there were a number of people that were saying how happy they were that I was here, and they just haven't heard from anyone from our organization in a while and didn't really know what was going on. So I wanted to make it clear that CMF still exists and we're still doing this work, and we've been connected with this network for a long time and want to continue to stay connected. So I wanted to get that in there. I felt like it was really important to thank people for their participation in that for so many years. And that made my exegetical message a little shorter, but
yeah, no, okay. I think that's totally fair. Yeah. Again, I feel like I'm a deeply loyal, faithful person in our kind of unique heritage.
Right.
I'm at multiple colleges up the coast. Right. I started it down in Fullerton and then came all the way up to Eugene. And I do have that a little bit of the same. Now I have some of my students who are currently serving or have served recently, and I always promote CMF. Tons of friends who've served, and I was in Ukraine with Doug Priest Jr. at one point. Yeah. He supported by Eastside Christian Church down in Fullerton. So, and when you said that, I was like, I don't think that I've heard enough that makes me feel like I'm still current.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was really, really helpful what you did tonight.
Good. Great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I heard Kip 2 or 3 years ago at Wainema.
Yeah, you did.
So that's kind of why.
Yeah. Are you the one that got me here?
Sent an email.
Oh yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah. So Joe really kind of helped coordinate this day. So
okay, great.
So all the amazing things happened today was Joe.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Just say thank you, Joe.
Yeah. I do want to say thank you to your organization for a couple of things. First of all, because of your organization that I went to the most amazing wedding I've ever been privy to, when Joel and Mercy Brock got married.
Oh wow!
And she was walked down the aisle by the African Children's Choir. Mm-hmm. It was amazing.
That's right, because he's worked with them for years, right?
Yeah,
they both have.
And they both have. She was in it, and then she helped with it, and he was participated too. And oh man, it was just the coolest wedding I've ever been a part of. And and we got to connect with them a lot because we were invited because they're one of the missionaries we support, and got to have some great conversations with them. And now we just love them. But it started with just the coolest wedding
That's
ever.
Great.
And then another one is another missionary ended up, we connected with them when they visited, and was able to participate in the Unity Project, Diane Lincoln.
Yep.
And she basically presented on the exact same topic that you did, of the idea that unity and common purpose are linked, that when we work together, when we come together for the same purpose, it creates unity.
Yep.
And that common
good.
purpose and also a reason to be united. So it was great. She did a great job, and I knew her because of CMFI. So thank you
Great.
for that.
Yeah.
And so I personally have benefited a lot from you guys, even beyond the awesome work you're doing.
So
Well,
I want to launch
thanks.
with a question, because again,
go ahead.
the presentation was just amazing, and I do have this, because unity today it's so visceral today because we just don't have it. Like, and I know that every generation has times and seasons where they feel like, man, there is really division. But we have taken division to a next level, and you named this, right? But we just don't do division; we demonize. Right. So we've taken it from being like, I'm not like you and I'm not with you, to like, now you are straight up, you're
evil.
evil.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm now going to be intentionally against you and find out ways to like sabotage everything you do.
Right.
The word he said was hate.
Yeah.
Deliberately, twice.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about that.
Well, I work with so many people right now that are both in the church in America and people who serve as missionaries that are just overwhelmed with concern for the American church right now. That there's so much division and hatred. It doesn't reflect the good news of Jesus. It doesn't reflect well in the church among people who aren't part of following Jesus at all. And one of my passions over the last few years increasingly has not just been for the work that's happening out there in ministries around the world, but the way that connecting that work to congregations in America helps to revitalize and bring health to congregations in America.
Yes.
So when a congregation in the U.S. is no longer just focused on the problems in their church and in their community, but they're partnering in unity with other congregations on a project or a specific ministry somewhere else in the world where there's usually great need, they're interacting with local Christian leaders in that place. They're learning from them as they interact with them. That interaction, that intercultural interaction, is the way that God works to expand the boundaries of what they know in the world and what they know about how church could be healthy in their own place. So I truly believe that part of the response or the salve, the balm, I don't know what you want to say, to this problem that we're in the church today is to not focus on all of these separate issues, but to focus on the mission of God, participating in that, being in relationship with people who are outside of your own cultural understanding, who are also followers of Jesus, and that starts to create a pathway for health in your congregation and brings unity.
It's us getting out of our own little socio-dramas to see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
And again, it's unity for what purpose, right?
Right.
At the end of the day, we talk a lot about diversity, which I think is beautiful and amazing. God has created this very diverse world, but there is something that actually holds it together. It's not diversity for diversity's sake.
Right.
And then unity is not conformity.
No.
Right.
So unity for what purpose?
Right.
All of a sudden we're like, oh, we have a reason
Right.
to be unified.
Yeah, and that's what I said tonight. I mean, to be clear, engaging in God's mission provides the why for the unity. In my mind, that's my whole framework. And so that's really what I want people to pick up on. And I don't want to say that you should engage in God's mission, so ignore all these other things. I mean, they're very important conversations that are happening in our society right now as it changes. But as I said earlier, the way to start engaging in those conversations is to focus first on God's mission and have that inform the conversations as you engage with them. Because then, if I am focused on God's mission and the gospel of Jesus, I can't demonize people just because I don't like them or I don't agree with them. I can't. I have to love them. I have to listen to them. I have to treat them as God's creation. And that provides a better framework than what we've been working with. So, yeah.
I think a challenge for people who are listening. If you are of the caught up in the things that specifically divide Americans, that are specific to our culture and our nation, next time you have a visiting foreign missionary, ask them how they feel about it. Because I remember having a conversation with the Lincolns when they were here, and they had spent a lot of time in England under COVID, which was locked down harder than we were, and they came over here, and I remember having a conversation with them and their perspective on all the fighting that Christians had been through on how to respond to all of it, the responding to the government and all the things, and it was just. They had a whole different perspective being outside of our bubble that was incredibly refreshing. And if we really do value missions, I think we should value the perspective of missionaries.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I can't say all missionaries will say the same thing, but to get that perspective from outside of America, I feel like it looks totally different. Yeah. I think you can get the same thing about denominations, because when you go to a place where there's three pastors in the whole area and you happen to be different denominations, suddenly those distinctions don't matter as much, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But
that's
yeah,
true.
Those conversations have been really helpful to me. And so if people have an opportunity to have those and ask those questions,
well, maybe we even add that another layer to that. I think that's really helpful for us to own how the church has lost credibility, and we've lost. Well, if we read to the last book of the Bible, we lost our first love, right? Genuinely. I think that you have any conversation with anybody who now, or at some point, maybe, hey, I had a decent view of America and what it was doing to try to be better in that kind of essence way, not better like in some competition way, but like it just had some things that allowed it to flourish in different ways. And today, like, I've actually have lost either faith, use that word like that way, or I think America is really struggling. It's lost its voice, maybe its credibility, whatever else. And if you ask that question as a learner, just as a person, say, hey, where are you learning? What are you seeing? All those kind of things. First of all, you'll build a relationship and actually have a genuine conversation. And if you can be humble enough to listen to what they say, you also might learn some things where we're really, really wrecking it.
Yeah. One of the fascinating things is this is the stuff that missionaries have been doing for a long time.
Yeah.
Paying attention to culture, learning the language, learning the stories of the people, eating the food of the people that they're ministering among. And then after doing all of that, starting to have conversations that make sense within that context. And what we're facing in America is the context has shifted so much that the church is foreign to the rest of the culture around it. And so if the church is going to be effective, even in the American context, people in the church have to learn the language of the people around them. And they have to listen to the stories. And they have to understand that this is not what you do in your Christian faith and in church is not understood by people. There's a cultural barrier that's being crossed just with your neighbors in your own community now, much more than in the past. And so that, again, engage with missionaries who do this stuff all the time. Learn from local leaders who are crossing boundaries in other parts of the world. Engage with like Indian Christians who work in these multi-religious contexts where they're always working, where there's lots of different religions. We could learn from them what we need to know to engage in American culture now. Where does it happen?
What do you think?
You've got to be connected to it.
Yeah.
So you've got to reach out and connect to a missionary or a project or Christians in other part of the world to even get an entrance into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jesus, when he prays for us to be one, oftentimes we think of that as a doctrinal unity, all the denominations getting together and stuff like that. But I actually, believe that Jesus was still thinking about ethnic groups, and, different kinds of people, not just ethnic groups necessarily, but different people that were just different in various and assorted and sundry ways. And what happens, because you said, Troy, that the church is losing credibility because of our, So what happens is if we are different, and Jesus knows we're different, he commanded us to reach all the different peoples. And if we are one, like he prayed, he knows, because he's really smart, Jesus. He knows that we will have credibility because the world is kind of divisive in general. It always has been with different peoples together, people with detached earlobes. My goodness. And you just find a reason to hate for whatever reason. And so when people outside of Jesus see the different people, that's why I think that he had the ethnicities in mind, the various social groups. When he sees us, one, loving each other, then the other folks automatically say, this doesn't happen. This is out of this world. Because what happens in the world, we all know that this is weird in a good way. And they said that he comes from God. Must be true.
Right.
Well, and Paul says something very similar to that in Ephesians, where he says that their unity is how Jesus, how is it? Is it defeats the powers? He talks about how the unity of the church that he's speaking to, the unity of the Jews and the Gentiles, is how how Jesus defeats the powers. Or, man, I need to look it up. But he's saying exactly that, like by being united in ways that the world did not think possible, that weren't possible under the powers. They are proving the truth of the gospel and defeating that.
Chapter 3.
Yes, it's chapter 3. I got to find it because it's going to bug me.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so as you were looking for that, what we know that we're called to as a body of Christ, right? And this is the cool part, because when we fast forward everything, we have a genuine imagination of what it looks like when God brings it all back to rights, right? It's a great English phrase because Americans can't figure out how to say it right. But when he brings it back to rights, it feels like, oh, that feels right. Like it feels good, right? And we have this beautiful picture in Scripture that every tongue, every nation, like everybody is unified in one voice, not one language in the sense. I mean, because there's all these different groups, right?
Right.
And we don't miraculously
Very
lose
good.
language and all learn how to speak, I don't know, whatever your favorite funny language would be. Pig Latin or whatever else, right? But at the end of the day, like when we see that, if we genuinely think that that is true, and then we extrapolate out of that and we say, okay, so the church is supposed to be, and I love this phrase, a foretaste and a sign of what that is.
Oh, yeah. Good.
Right? And we have that picture, and we're like, okay, so what the hell are we doing now?
Literally.
I'm using it in a word
Technical
purposely.
sense.
That's what I thought.
Because I'm like, we are literally creating the other place
Right.
by choosing not to use that as our ultimate.
Right.
And so, again, just somebody go, okay, and I said this the first night, I know, but so if that's not good news to you, if you don't think that's beautiful, then I don't think you want to be a Christian. Or you're following something else, or you've mixed in something else, or you've co-opted something else.
Right.
So if we start with the end in mind and we back out of that, now again, that should inspire us and that should convict us deeply, and repentance is obviously a part of that. But then it also asks us to do what you just already eloquently said. What does it mean then to be people who help do that here, right? And we talk about the great prayer that Jesus teaches his disciples. Your will be done on earth as in heaven, right? And that means that our job while we're here is to bring the there to here as long as we're here.
Right.
Yeah.
What other part of the job description do you need?
Yeah. Yeah. So real quick, I do.
It was the passage.
You found it.
He got
It's Ephesians 3:8 starting 8. This grace was given to me, the least of all the saints, to proclaim to the Gentiles the incalculable riches of Christ. So to the Gentiles is a separate ethnicity that needs to be brought in. And to shed light for all about the administration of the mystery hidden for ages in God who created all things. This is so that God's multifaceted wisdom may now be made known through the church to the rulers and authorities in the heavens. Mm-hmm. So the unity of the Jews and Gentiles in the church proves God's wisdom to the powers and authorities.
Wow.
It makes the point that God is right because he's able to unite us in ways that the powers aren't, and the ways that powers would say can't happen or shouldn't. Mm-hmm. So are we actually showing the world that God is wise?
We will.
I mean, ultimately, if we do, it's because God is overwhelming our failures, right? Because I think we're succeeding in more ways than at least we see in the press, but we are clearly failing in ways to actually demonstrate what Paul is talking about.
Right.
And we're actually discrediting that in some pretty serious ways that need to be.
Which is probably my favorite phrase that I'm going to use now from here on out, Kip. The enduring mission of God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You took the topic, the idea that we started with, this endurance and how much we're all feeling the storm around us individually, and said, by the way, God is still on mission.
Right.
He didn't have a hiccup. He didn't get sidetracked. He actually didn't get quarantined. At the end of the day, like, he is still on the move. Is that what you said today? Or someone said this. They said, like, God never stopped moving.
No.
He was not stuck at home, right, on Zoom.
Jordan.
It was.
Jordan said that.
It was.
Yeah.
It was one of another missionary today was sharing about this, another global worker. So anyways, I just love the phrase, the enduring mission of God.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think another reason why, what you were saying earlier, I kind of categorized in my head as our churches need missionaries. Like when we support missionaries, we are better for it because of what they teach us as well.
Right.
And I think another way is what you've kind of been talking about, that they clarify for us what the enduring mission actually is. Because another thing that you said that I absolutely loved, and if I was more charismatic, would have been out of my seat over, when you talked about what the good news is. Because I think I've actually thought, what if we tested how we preach the gospel based on what would work in a third world country? Mm. Right? What if that was part of my discernment?
Country. Yeah, either way.
Yeah, because so often we reduce it to a get out of jail free card, or moral therapeutic deism, or, I think that our eternal state is important, but I feel like there are people I will talk to about you're going to hell, and they say, I'm already in hell. What are you going to do about the hell I'm in? So when you say that the good news has brought water to the desert, and you bring all these things that these missionaries are doing, and it's not like they're trying to bribe people into the gospel. That is part of the gospel, that we would give water to people who are thirsty. Is like, if you bring the gospel and not water, if you bring the words and not water, you're not actually doing the whole calling. And so
you're the Levite and you're the priest walking along the side of the road.
Yeah.
Bringing the gospel. We're not just talking about talking, and just, So the Turkana, I had a lump in my throat, little eye problem. When the women, you had the contrast. When you first got there, you said, people are, well, you can say it, but you said people were begging you.
Yeah.
Begging
they
from you.
They were focused on their own need. Let's just say it that way, right?
And they had nothing.
Yeah.
I mean,
from
our perspective.
Right.
I mean, there's some nuance to that, but yes.
Right. And then years later, you came back. Is that right? You came back to visit after the good news, the teaching of Jesus, people learning to obey everything that Jesus commanded, which includes helping people plant gardens.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So then people are giving you spinach.
Yeah.
At the end. Giving
to have
spinach because they love you.
Oh, you're leaving here. Take this bag of greens so you can eat it with your meal tonight. I had never had anybody give me food in Turkana when I was working there previously. But,
There's a difference.
that's a transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hospitality.
That's preaching the gospel.
The hospitality now
it
overflows
flows out.
because of
Oh, I'm sorry. I interrupted you.
No, go, Joe.
I just was getting all excited. No, I forgot what I was going to say.
Oh, no, I feel bad now. Go ahead.
Yeah, no.
Giving,
Yeah, go ahead.
hospitality,
and preaching the
Good news, yeah.
Yeah, it'll come back to me.
Okay.
Yeah, I really like what you said about missionaries. It's not just about, well, I support a missionary so they can go there and do that work, but that missionary relationship becomes like a bridge between your church and that other place and other people who are following Jesus, and that intercultural bridge of the missionary is a role that we've ignored for a long time, that there's something that comes the other direction too.
Yeah.
For us in our churches.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
so important.
I think this is huge. I think we have to start emphasizing that more.
Yeah.
Because, again, I think most congregations thinks that they're doing a good one for the missionary.
Right.
Right. Like, oh,
Yeah.
aren't you thankful that we decided that you're one of our faves and
Yeah.
we're going to
Yeah.
lump some money together,
Yeah.
depending on the percentage that we're allowed to do, or
Yeah.
and you're allowed to talk to some of our people, so we're doing a good one for you, right?
Yeah.
And that just just smacks again of a miss of the mission and a miss of being together, and it's slightly arrogant. Right? Again, it's back to the whole like, hey, we're the hope of the world, so we're going to be sending people. And it's like, there's multiple countries now that send people to America because they need it more than we do now.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of churches would think, well, let's use a place like Turkana as an example. I send missionaries there. Our congregation sends missionaries there. We don't have anything to learn from the Turkana, right?
Oh, gosh.
Like, we figured this out. In fact, we're the ones who are sending the missionaries. But the reality is, in God's kingdom, we all have something to learn from each other. And when we look at the problems in America right now, I mean, I'm just going to keep hitting this over and over again. One of the answers is connect with something else and other people in other parts of the world to get other resources for how to deal with these issues.
I got an opportunity to do that when I'm checking a Bible translation. So I'm with someone of a different culture. We
Right.
want to make sure that it's right. We're going along. We're reading about Abraham, trying to see if Genesis is okay. And the man that I'm with is totally not impressed with Abraham.
Yeah.
I'm kind of thinking, Hebrews chapter. What do you mean? You're not
He's
impressed with him?
he's a lot of ink in 11 on him, right?
Yeah.
But the man I'm with is saying, well, God told him he was going to have a son. What's he fretting for? I mean, why did he lie?
Right.
And so for me, I had a different view of Abraham, colored by what I know about the New Testament. He didn't know, but he was in the story. At the time.
Yeah.
Or another time, I was checking on the son, the prodigal son that came back.
Yeah.
And it was a little surprising. I'm watching people for their reactions, and they're laughing.
Yeah.
I mean, they are just. One guy fell off the bench. He was laughing so hard.
Yeah.
Because I learned more about the cultural. They're closer to the cultural situation, and they were
What about
reacting.
it was humor for them? Do you remember?
Oh yeah. It was a stupid thing to think that you were going to come back to the Father and it was going to be good. He's gonna mess you up, So they chuckled when he went to the capital city because they've all gone to the capital city. they knew what he was.
You
know what happens there.
all overnight. Yeah, it's gone.
But when they were laughing and at the climax of the laughter though, what the Father did and what he said, was so surprising that everybody was silent. And it literally was crickets because it was at night.
Yeah.
But they were silent.
Right.
And I knew that a different category of God, a different understanding of God, because they knew the Father was God. They were getting the parable, had entered their mind. They weren't expecting that.
Yeah.
And that was serious, and a pretty good translation.
That's what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
and you ended up with a better translation.
But the main point is I learned stuff about the prodigal son that I hadn't realized, and I learned something about Jesus that he actually knew how to bring it.
Yeah.
You know, and so, I felt like I was living at the time, you know, in Bible times. I feel like that often.
And that's fascinating with Scripture. And I've been part of groups that have studied intercultural and intercontextual hermeneutics. We're going to nerd out for a little bit.
Oh, yeah, please.
But the idea that you bring a group of people into a room from all different cultural backgrounds and have them read and study Scripture together. And what you end up with is everybody in the room has something to share that everyone else hasn't even thought of from reading the same passage, because they're seeing different things. And so this is just, that's a microcosm of this bigger picture of the way that global mission could have a positive effect on the church in America, where I'll nerd out some more. I call it ontic expansion, that the truth of who God is limited by our context. And when we engage with people from other contexts, the truth of God expands.
Boom.
We see a bigger picture of who God is.
Yeah.
And that could only be a good thing for us.
That could be why Jesus wants us to come together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if we go back to the end of the picture, that's why it's full. Because everybody is participating, everybody is learning, and everybody is focused on God.
And that's when everybody actually sees God.
It is. You see him clearly, right?
Right. Yeah.
As if not through, right, all these lenses and veils and everything else and dim mirrors and everything else.
Well, that's Colossians 3:11, right? Then there's no Jew or Gentile, circumcised or uncircumcised, Scythian, barbarian, slave or free, but Christ is all and is in all. So Christ is all that matters, and he's in all of them, everyone in the church. And that, I love that verse. I could dwell on that verse my whole life.
But to get to that point, we have to overcome racism.
Yeah.
We have to overcome bigotry. We have to overcome our cultural imperial understanding of we're smarter than they are and they don't have anything to teach us. Like, there are a lot of hurdles to overcome for us to really be brothers and sisters with people who are different from us and from other cultural contexts. And I think that's a huge challenge.
Yeah, there's so many good things we could talk about at another day.
Yeah.
I was hoping we were going to get to some of these other ones, but I'm like, okay, we're just going to have to figure out a way to do this another time, another
some
conversation.
sequels. Yeah.
Because I feel like there's a really good benediction right here. I think we're ending in a really good place. It's this idea, again, that we are united in Christ because of Christ.
Yes.
But that work has to happen in each one of us so that we can see as Christ sees. And what we've realized, and if we spend a lot of time, we could talk about how far we've missed it. And even in our own history, we've missed it.
In
so
mission history.
Yeah, and it's a work in progress. And at the end of the day, it has to be ultimately, Paul's phrase, I love this, Christ's love compels us. That's it. At the end of the day, any other motivation will be less than. And maybe that's where we can, again, remind ourselves about why we're doing all these things and that humility to learn from one another in the process. Is that a fair place we can end?
Yeah, that's great.
We can pause. We got to have more conversations at some point.
Absolutely. Well, the whole
Would love
intercultural communication is just too much fun. And the the prodigal son story has so many great ways in which we unpack what other people see and hear in that story and how we in the West have missed most of it. So, all right. Should we try our closing?
Yep.
Oh, just a minute. What is it?
Zippity doo dah. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
How about we do this together?
Brilliant. Well done. Hey, thanks for listening today. We genuinely thank you for your time. Just pray that you would actually find ways to collaborate with others for kingdom things. How about we do this together?